Ladies and gentlemen, you are back with me today, and today we are going to talk about a few things related to my last video. So, in my last video, I talked a little bit about the Papal States. Um, I'm sure a lot of you who have viewed that video don't even know what that is, or what the heck I was talking about when I was referring to it. You might have been able to suss out that, oh, papal, it probably has to do with the Pope. But to get a historical background on that, today we're going to be doing a video on the Papal States, their creation, and what their role was within history. So, why were the Papal States created? Well, primarily the Papal States were created as a Frankish response to the Lombards exerting their influence over the Italian peninsula. As the Roman Empire was losing its grip on the territory of Italy, the Pope was asking for help from anyone that he could get help from. Specifically, he didn't want to be under the political influence or the political domain of the Romans, and so he turned to the Franks, which they were also Christian, but they were outside of the, I guess, imperial structure of the Roman Empire. So here we have an image of the Roman Empire after the death of Emperor Justinian, who's also a saint, by the way. He was the last Roman emperor to have complete hold over Italy and to even attempt to reassert influence over the West. As you can see, the peninsula is completely under control, um, although it is obvious that the power base of Rome is ultimately within the East, and uh, that is how it will remain over the next roughly 1,000 years that they exist, the West being completely lost after Justinian's death. After Justinian's death, Justin II, uh, his successor, and his nephew took over as the emperor. Uh, so, with him being the head of the Roman Empire, he's literally the fledgling of Justinian the Great. What could go wrong? Unfortunately, a lot. The treasury was completely bankrupt, and there was a lot of problems with the Slavs and the Avar Cognate. The Avars being a Caucasian steppe people, or Central Asian steppe people, um, specifically, and they had been within the Pannonian Basin, which is where modern-day Hungary is, and had been exerting influence over the various Germanic tribes and the Slavs, pushing them into the territories of the empire time and time again. Well, after the coffers of the empire were no longer available to pay off the Avars decided to, one, attack the Gepids, who were a nominal ally to the Romans, and two, push the Lombards into Italy proper. Now, here we can see that the territory marked out by the Lombards is kind of split throughout Italy. When they initially invaded, obviously because they're not a very civilized people at the time, they do not have the abilities to take over walled cities and whatnot as easily as, say, the Romans or the Franks, or even the Visigoths would. And so they stuck to more rural areas and towns which were not as defended. And so we have a disunified Lombard Italy. However, several years after the invasion, with their first king, when the king died, the Lombard states split with no unifying king over them for much of their existence. We had the southern part, which became the Duchy of Benevento, the mid part being the Duchy of Tuscany, and the upper area being the Duchy of Lombardy, which the area is still called Lombardy to this day. Now, as I previously stated, the Italian peninsula was invaded by the Lombards due to them being pushed out of their territory by the Avar Cognate. And they forced them out of the area because the Roman Emperor at the time, Justin II, uh, decided to stop having a policy of paying for peace. He did this with the Avars as well as the Persians. And so, while Justin II was allied to the Franks, um, they were not very much help when it came to the Lombards breaking into northern Italy and then the rest of Italy itself. Um, and the Romans themselves were too focused on the Persian threat in the east, which had been a thorn in their side since the inception of the iteration that the Persians were on, which was the Sassanid Empire. I don't want to get too sidetracked from the main topic, but I will get there as this next part is very important. So, I just mentioned the Persians and the Romans, getting into it all the time. Well, as you just saw on the map in 600, um, if some of you know a little bit about history and religion, in about 620, the Arab tribes are unified under Muhammad and start, conquering throughout Arabia and whatnot, causing a little bit of trouble. Um, at this time, the Romans and the Persians are fighting each other. They're constantly at war. The Romans go through a terrible emperor under Emperor Phocas, who like essentially guts the empire of any patrician and like virtuous people. Eventually, there's a coup. Heraclius the Elder and Heraclius the Younger, they take over and eliminate the heretical and uh, degenerate administration that had been in place. So Heraclius goes and tries to fix the problems that were going on under Phocas, which were the what is called the final Roman Sassanid War. The outcome of this being the destruction of the Sassanid Empire and the almost destruction of the Roman Empire. Although they survived, they will be much weakened as the entire military was essentially destroyed after all the wars, and money was essentially non-existent. So here we have a map of the Roman Empire after Heraclius' death in approximately 651. As you can see, the Arabs have taken over much of the fertile lands of Egypt and the Levant being like Syria, Iraq, uh, the other general parts of the Middle East on the western side of it. And the Romans have also lost a bit more territory within the Balkans. They lost something to the Visigoths, and then Italy is very much out of their control. Now, this is a very big time jump, but we went from the last map at 651 to now we're at 755. As you can see, the Roman Empire is very much smaller than it used to be. Its control over much of the West and other territories that it had regained from Justinian are lost to the Muslims as well as to the Lombards in Italy. The Lombard lands being unified by a king called Aistulf, who is threatening the papal lands. He directly has control over them. However, the Romans are technically still supposed to be protecting the Pope because he is part of the empire. And because the obligation is not being fulfilled by the emperor, obviously due to the uh, strife that is going on back home from the Slavs and the Muslims, the current Pope of the time, Stephen, asks the Franks for help. So, Pope Stephen asks the Frankish kingdom for help. The current king of the Franks is Pepin III, and he had just recently deposed the last of the Merovingians from the Frankish kingdom about 5 years prior, so in 750. Now we have Pepin wanting to make good grace with the Pope, and so he invites him to a palace within Francia. While Pope Stephen was within the Frankish kingdom, he crowned Pepin as the king, which would soon become a tradition carried on by the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire and also the Frankish Empire before it fell apart. that they would always be crowned by the Pope. He also crowned his two sons, Charlemagne and Carloman. And so, with that being now set, Pepin decides that when he invades Italy, he is going to give the land to the Pope. Um, this is not his jurisdiction, however, because that land technically is Roman lands, and the imperial territory does not belong to the Pope. And why would, the head of the church, or the supposed head of the church, as there are five patriarchs and the Pope is just one of them, why should he have to be allowed to govern a secular hold-in, or why should he have political influence with over a realm when that is not his job? But Pepin decides that this is going to be done, and so they create the donation of Pepin, is what it soon becomes called. Um, a very important contract or document within Italian history that creates the Papal States. And their justification for doing this was based on the donation of Constantine, uh, being Constantine the Great back when Christianity was first made an accepted religion within Rome. And yet, that was a forgery. Stephen and Pepin both forged the donation of Constantine in order to justify their claim and um, exertion of their wills and control over the Italian territories in the the Exarchate of Romagna, Emilia Romagna, Tuscany, those areas. And so after the invasion by the Franks and the successful capturing of the Italian lands and the drafting of the donation of Pepin and the forgery of the donation of Constantine, this is what we get. We get the Papal States, which are nominally under the yoke of the Frankish Empire. However, this would not be temporary, as soon we would come to find that the Franks would dominate Italy for a very long time, and the Frankish alliance with the popes uh, would continue to be a thing ad infinitum until the Franks are no longer a power within the realm. Now, I just mentioned until the Franks were no longer a power within the region. Well, the important news for that is that the son of Pepin III, the first Carolingian king of the Franks, Charlemagne becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, because when he takes the throne, he gets crowned by the Pope as the King of Rome. This being due to the fact that, one, the Pope for a very long time has disliked, well, the institution of the Pope has disliked the Roman Empire within the East, as well as um, there is currently a female ruler within the Roman Empire. And this is roughly the year 800. And so Charlemagne becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, which is technically the heir to the Western Roman Empire. And the Western Roman Empire, though now dead, passes its imperial authority onto the Holy Roman Empire, which will be dominated by the Franks for a couple hundred years uh, until they split apart and then out of the empire. And then eventually the Holy Roman Empire just becomes an area of the Italian territories, including the Papal States and the German states. When I say German at this point, it's very loosely defined, as German can be anywhere from uh, modern day, like central or the Western Poland, to the Netherlands, to eastern parts of France. Um, you know, it's a very large territory. Oh, well, Colin, look at that. You have the HRE no longer in control. Well, actually, that is not true. As you can see, we have a label that says the boundary of the Holy Roman Empire, and the Papal States are still within it. Yes, it is no longer a Frankish empire, but it is still very much an empire in which the Pope is a part of, and which they have a significant control of territory with their own territory, and then them being able to exert influence over the Duchy of Spoleto and other such states, as well as because the Pope is the head of the Papal States, both the secular and religious head, he's able to hold sway over uh, the other Italian states with the ability for him to excommunicate people, as well as crown in rulers, specifically rulers of the Holy Roman Empire. Wait a minute, Colin, what are you saying? The Pope has such political influence for so long? Yes. So, in reality, the destruction, or rather the doing away with of the Papal States did not occur until they were incorporated into Italy with the Risorgimento being completed in the 1870s. So before then, the Italian states were continuously disunified and had no chance of unification, even after they broke out of the Holy Roman Empire in the early 1500s. Um, they were still left to be under the control of various, city states, merchant republics, um, external control from Spanish, French, Austrians, so on and so forth. I'm not going to say that it is all because of the Papal States, but they caused a great um, addition to that because the popes were continuously calling for external influence in order to allow for stability and control within the Italian states, and also preventing any um, power, regional power that is, from becoming too strong and able to, you know, take the lands of the Papal States and create a unified nation. This happened several times, um, specifically like with the nation of Venice, with Milan, with the Tuscans. Uh, yeah, a couple of historical examples, but eventually the Papal States did get incorporated into Italy or Italy, and then the Pope just became, head of the Catholic Church, no longer a leader of a kingdom. Of the video. Uh, Thanks for watching and listening. I hope you leave a comment or like, maybe subscribe, although you don't have to. I would like to know your thoughts though on what you think about the history that I presented, and also maybe suggestions for future videos. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.